Alzheimer's disease is something most of us are all too familiar with. We've all been in contact with this disease, one way or another. We've heard stories from coworkers or friends, witnessed loved ones slowly losing their memories, their thoughts, their very identity. For those of you fortunate enough to not know all about this disease, let me tell you a bit about Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is a disease that damages cells in our brain, the so-called neurons. It doesn't just damage them, but it also disrupts this thing called neurointegration, which basically means the way our neurons interact with one another. It starts out slowly and in one specific part of the brain, called the hippocampus. It's responsible for short-term memory, which is why short-term memory loss is one of the first symptoms of Alzheimer's. And given time, these memory problems will only get worse, and the disease will spread and affect other parts of the brain, leading to many more symptoms, like problems with reading, short attention span, changes in mood, and finally, patients will lose their lives. And this is exactly why it's vital to detect this disease early on and make sure it doesn't progress to this terrible end state. And to achieve this goal, I would like to introduce to you Valproate. Valproate isn't a new drug. It's currently widely used to treat patients suffering from a number of diseases like proven migraine headaches. And we believe this well-researched and proven to be safe drug could also be used in the treatment of Alzheimer's and delay the disease progression and potentially even stop it. But before I continue, I would like to tell you a bit more about this drug and the way it works. It has a profound effect on neuronal stem cells. And what these stem cells do, well, they have the potential to become a multitude of functioning cells in the brain, including neurons and so-called glial cells, which are cells that support the neurons. And since it's the neurons that are depleted in Alzheimer's, we ideally need a method to stimulate our neuronal stem cells to create more neurons and less glial cells. And luckily, this is exactly what Valproate does. Now, this is just a little bit of information about Valproate. For more, feel free to contact us. To make sure our clinical trial is as reliable as possible, we will need many participants. And while we would love to include everyone, we do have some criteria which will have to be fulfilled before you can participate. Number one, since we want to halt the progression of the disease, we need participants that don't already have progressed Alzheimer's. This means we will only accept patients that have been diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, or MCI. Well, your physician probably gave you a mini mental state examination to confirm this diagnosis. Now, number two, to specifically assess the effects of Valproate on Alzheimer's disease, we won't accept participants with another uncontrolled disease, including uncontrolled hypertension or liver failure. And if you fulfill these criteria, we will be more than happy to welcome you to this promising clinical trial. We would also like to invite your friends and family members to join us during the meeting to volunteer as healthy subjects to further aid our research. To make sure Valproate has the neuroprotective effect we expect, we need a reliable method to inspect the brain, and specifically the hippocampus. But as we now know, it's not just cellular damage that leads to the symptoms of Alzheimer's, but also disruption of neurointegration, or the way our neurons interact. The main method by which neurons interact is the release of substances called neurotransmitters, and a very important neurotransmitter is GABA. So all we need to assess whether our drug, Valproate, has a neuroprotective effect that also aids with neurointegration is a way to measure GABA. And luckily we can do just that with weight PET scan, to visualize GABA in the brain. Now that we have a way to visualize neurointegration, we can see what effects Valproate has to protect this vital process. And with all those steps completed, we can now finalize our trial setup. We'll perform a randomized controlled trial and divide our volunteers in 3 different groups. The first 2 groups will consist of Alzheimer patients, which will either be given a Valproate or a placebo. And the last group will consist of healthy volunteers, which will only be given a PET scan. We'll use these findings so that we can compare GABA secretion in healthy individuals with those affected by Alzheimer's. The information we'll gain from this can then be used to increase our understanding of the disease and develop new methods of treating it. Well, this has been quite a lot of information to gather, so let's make sure everything is clear. By taking part in this study, you can help us find a cure for Alzheimer's disease. We will be testing how Valproate affects the brains of individuals with Alzheimer's and compare it to healthy individuals. Now, Valproate is safe. However, there is a small chance you might experience some minor side effects, such as nausea or diarrhea. And if you find these make you feel too unwell, or you feel uncomfortable at any stage of the experience, you may end your participation. Now, in order to see how the brain of individuals in the healthy group and in the Alzheimer group reacts to Valproate, we will use PET scanning, an advanced imaging technique that allows us to analyze the changes occurring at a molecular level. These checkups will happen 4 times a year and will each take no longer than 1 day. And finally, we would like to contact friends and family members so they too can aid us in our research. We are highly optimistic that our approach could make a difference in the grim outcome Alzheimer patients now face, and it is up to you to help us in this journey towards finding a cure to this devastating disease.